Welcome to E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy, a podcast brought to you by the Empathy Collective, a consulting firm that helps business leaders inspire change, one conversation at a time. We are building a community of like-minded leaders and experts who all share the same passion, taking care of people at work. Whether you are a blue-collar worker or a white-collar worker, small business owner or corporate executive, you belong in this community. My guest today on this week's episode, Sheryl Anjanette, asks us in her TEDx talk to imagine a world where artificial intelligence doesn't just execute tasks, but it understands and empathizes with our struggles, our joys, and our human experiences. As CEO of Parsley 360, she is making this vision a reality. And today we will talk about how she is infusing empathy into AI and what it means for the modern workplace and for society. This is E3, Engage and Empower with Empathy. Welcome to the show today, Sheryl. It's so lovely to have you here. I actually just was listening to a podcast episode from Simon Sinek. I don't know if you follow his A Bit of Optimism podcast, but it was so timely because I listened to it this morning and we were having this dialogue today in the afternoon. And he was going back and forth with Cal Fussman, who's a journalist, and they were talking about AI and how it's impacted their careers. So they're both optimists naturally. So they're looking at technology through the lens of an optimist, but they're also very weary of the ways that it could be abused and used in the wrong way. They talked a lot about the younger generation having social anxiety and really leaning on technology as a way to avoid social interaction. And I know you talk a lot about that loneliness epidemic that we're experiencing in the US. So all that to say, this is going to be a fascinating dialogue because I know you're working a lot with artificial intelligence at your tech company and also trying to make it more emotionally intelligent. And what does that mean for not just workplaces, but also for society? So very excited to have this dialogue.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and I just can't wait to dive in because this is such an important conversation to have, and for all of us to really get our heads around and think about and plan for.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just curious, why did you develop Parsley? Like how did this come about? Because I'm sure that you saw a pain point that
Yeah.
you were seeing in the workplace. And so what made you think, gosh, humans just need more emotionally intelligent AI. They need to have this AI coach.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
It really wasn't about, it didn't start with AI. It started with, just as you said, it started with the problem that I've worked with for more than 25 years. So I would say this vision actually came to me about 25 years ago before AI. And it really came about because, I had stepped into a role. I'd had different leadership roles, as we all do. We kind of move up the chain. We get that management, and then we get into a director role. And I'd taken on a new position with the company as a senior director. And I walked into a team of about 85 people that reported to me, but there was a layer of management below me. So they reported directly to their managers, and I oversaw that whole team, the managers and these 85 reports who were just incredible people. A lot of enthusiasm. You know that enthusiasm, like you want to do a good job and you're excited, but you just keep hitting blocks. And the managers had had no management or leadership training. They were just kind of thrown into it because they were good people that wanted to do a good job. And so I dove into this situation. This is kind of where this vision evolved. And I thought, okay, what does this team need? And I started on multiple fronts. I wouldn't say I did it incrementally, but I started to create these leadership trainings for the managers every week. And I'd work with them, really work with them, but then I was available to them. So I knew everything they were hearing was only theoretical until they got into a situation. And eventually they would call me and they would say, this just happened. I'd say, okay, let's go back. Remember, we talked about, I want you to go say this, try this, do this, see how it rolls, see how it evolves, and come back to me and tell me what you experienced. And so I brought them into the situation where they were actually not just knowing, but doing the thing. And then I also spent time in every location. Every day I was in a different location, and I made sure I met with every report. And I can't say I got to 100%. 85 is a lot of people in a 30, 31 day time frame. But I usually got to speak one-on-one with probably 80 to 85% of the reports. And so I was really hands-on. Every end of month, I raised everybody's goals. I hand wrote these nice notes to them, all this tremendous human connection. And Rebecca, it worked. There was a lot of empathy. I know we're talking about empathy, but it was really a lot of listening, active listening, putting myself in someone else's shoes, helping them from where they were to get to where they wanted to be, and showing them a vision of something they could get to that maybe hadn't crossed their minds. And so people got really energetic. They were very enthusiastic. You know, they met their goals. They exceeded goals that they didn't ever believe they could get to. And I was always available, by the way, for every one of them. So if they needed to reach out to me personally, they could do it, not in a way that bypassed their manager, but just they knew that I was there to help them. But it was also a recipe for burnout. And after a certain amount of time, you would find yourself a little distracted. You'd be in these one-on-one meetings trying to listen carefully and really empathize and really be there. And sometimes, just that human response of, there's also this email waiting for me and these people that are trying to sabotage me over here, and the senior leadership that are just asking me to do all these other things just because I can. And I realized it was a recipe for burnout. So fast forward 25 years, I've been working in gender intelligence, and I've been speaking to numerous people at different levels, but usually in senior leadership at organizations. And I was hearing a lot of these same issues 25 years later. And I've really been hearing about this backslide. We've had this backslide, and that was a big frustration for me. You think about that rubber band, you stretch, you stretch, you stretch, but it snaps back. How do we break that elastic limit? How do we get the change we desire and the results we desire? And I thought it's because we have to catch people in the moment. Like I was doing at a human level. We have to be there when they need us. We can't just be there once a week or once a month, or sometimes empathetic and sometimes not. I thought, how can we do this? And AI had, ChatGPT had just come out, and it was still in its earliest version. But I thought, wow, I had this vision. I hadn't seen it yet, but I knew we could do it. I thought, what if we could train AI to listen carefully, to be there, that omnipresence in the moment, and catch people and be able to listen actively and help them start where they are and bring them to where they need to go, and be able to follow their conversations and be really human-like, not robotic. And at that time, it's gotten so much better today, but at that time, a lot of the voice AI was still so robotic. And you felt like you were speaking to a machine. And I thought, voice is so important. People would always talk about my voice. And I would think voice and tone tells a story. There's an intention there. I don't know if you know this, Rebecca. I'm also a hypnotherapist. So I'm used to working with people's subconscious mind, and how do we settle their emotions, and how do we get them to settle their nervous system and bring the logical mind back into the conversation. And I thought, what if we could have that omnipresence that could be there when we couldn't? They could be there in the moment if it's 3 a.m. or 5 minutes before a high stakes meeting. And that was just the vision. I'm not quite sure yet how. I'm not the technologist, but I do know that this could change an industry and change the world. And so I set out to do this. And in doing that, I attracted amazing talent, amazing people that share my vision. My team is like, nobody's being paid yet. And they're just there because of the mission and the vision, and, people with 4 decades of AI experience that can do this, that get it, that can build this, that are building this, that have built this, that want to bring this vision to life. And so that's what we're doing.
That's incredible. And I did not know you were a hypnotherapist. I've actually interviewed several hypnotherapists on my podcast, actually on the line of therapy. Do you see this type of empathetic AI replacing your job as a therapist? Because I know in some cases AI is used in the mental health world as well, or is
Yeah.
starting to be used.
Yeah. I don't see it as a replacement. I see it as an augmentation. From a hypnotherapy standpoint, I think that it can provide access to human therapy and connect people better to humans, understand where they are. It may be guided meditation tapes. A human therapist is always the front line. That's where you want to go. A human coach, I would argue as well, like let's get human coaches if we can. And maybe this is just the augmentation. I don't see AI as replacing coaching and therapy. I just see it as augmenting it. But I do think in the worlds where access is not, it's not a given. It's not even a question of replacement. It's just a question of, can I have access to something? Because I can't afford therapy. I don't have access to therapy, or I don't have access to a human coach and I can't afford it, or my company won't do that. They do that maybe for senior leadership or middle management, but they're not going to do that for me or for everyone. So sometimes it's really just a matter of access.
That's a good point, creating more accessibility to these types of services. So going back to the role of AI in middle management, how do you see this evolving? You mentioned the burnout happening at the middle layer of the organization. You experienced it. Clearly, there's a lot of pressure being placed on middle management from the senior executive team to perform. And let's face it, our performance metrics are mainly execution focused. So we're
Yeah.
not being measured as leaders on how empathetic we are, for example.
Yeah.
What is your perspective on the evolution of middle management? Should we continue doing what we're doing, measuring leaders on executing and strategy, and then having this AI coach as kind of the supplement to the emotionally intelligent, kind of the hard stuff, having the tough conversations with our employees? We'll have AI help us with that because senior leaders aren't measuring us on that anyway. So why should we care?
First of all, I do want to mention everything that we do, at least in my company, Parsley. I can't say that for the large language models or for every model, but privacy is a core feature. So your conversation with your AI coach, and by the way, we do a coach, we don't do therapy. So it is a little different. So yes, it has an impact on mental health or loneliness and all the things, but from a coaching perspective. Middle management is a really important demographic for us to look at. They're probably the linchpin for any organization. They are the connection to your talent, and they are the ones that are kind of sandwiched between senior leadership and the organization. And your role, if you're a middle manager or director, is so essential to the organization. So if someone in your organization hasn't told you that lately, I'm just going to say thank you, because you are truly the heroes. But it is a role that can be very difficult personally. So what AI can do as a coach is you have your own individual instance. And that instance can help you wherever you are, whether it's personally or professionally. It can be what your strategies are, what your goals are for upward mobility, how to have better conversations with senior leaders. And sometimes we have to, as a middle manager, you have to manage those above you. And that's kind of an awkward position to be in. And how do you then also manage those under you so that you do get that productivity? Because it is important. We work for a company because we want to help move that company forward. The company doesn't work for us. We work for the company. They're paying us a salary. So we don't necessarily flip on the head. We just understand that productivity is important, but so is empathy. And so are the relationships of belonging and inclusion that matter. All of those are important. And the fuel for productivity truly is empathy. It truly is what drives trust. It drives engagement. And when people have trust and they feel like they belong and they are engaged and they are included, then we get productivity. Then we get that productive workforce. So it's all part of the equation. So I think that what we see AI doing, what my vision for it will be, is that it can be that coach in everyone's pocket. So as a middle manager, if you're having a difficult time with an employee or you're stretched and overwhelmed and you know exactly what that person needs is empathy, but you have compassion fatigue at the moment, which is a real thing. We're exhausted. Or maybe you're one of those empathetic leaders that over index on the empathy to the point where you take on other people's issues as your own and you don't know how to set those boundaries. So maybe AI can help you set your own boundaries, balance your own life, give a little more of your time to your family and to yourself so that when you show up for people, it's in healthier, more productive ways. So you have this personal relationship with AI that's going to help you with self-reflection, help you if you've been a people pleaser, which a lot of us have been through our lives, or perfectionists, to set healthy boundaries. Not just saying, no, 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 no. Now I had no boundaries. Now I'm going to create this vault around myself and I'm not accessible to anyone. It's really not this huge pendulum swing, but it's really about how do I create healthy boundaries. It's going to help you see your own blind spots. What am I not seeing? Why am I feeling resentful of this situation? Why am I burning out when this other person doesn't seem to be? So it's helping you, and it's helping you as a manager and as a leader so that you understand what your people need, how to help them in the moment. And if they each have an instance, which is the vision, that it's not exclusive, it's inclusive, that everyone in the organization has their own instance of this, that they're able to work through some of these self-reflections and understand themselves better and understand where they have more agency, so that when you have that conversation with your higher ups, with your team, they're healthier, they're more productive.
Yeah. I'm seeing the role now, the coaching role, and how this AI platform will help kind of coach the leader any time of day, whenever he or she needs support. Do you see the platform taking the place of those one-on-one conversations that the leader is having with the employee, like all those 80 conversations you were having? Or do you see it being more of a supporting mechanism for providing ideas on how to have those conversations?
In my instance, I really didn't have to have those one-on-ones with everyone in my organization. I did it because my team wasn't built up yet to the point where they were having them. But in an organization that's built well and there are systems, you probably don't have 85 people that you need to have one-on-ones with.
Yeah.
A normal team is what, anywhere from 3 to 10 people, maybe 3 to 8, generally speaking. So maybe it's a little bit more, but those conversations are, I think, human to human connection is what we want to get back to. We want to make sure that our AI is augmenting so that those conversations are better. They're more productive. They're energizing. They're not depleting. When we think about them, it's like, oh gosh, another one-on-one, and I'm exhausted. I'm stretched. I've got too much on my plate, where now we can get back to a healthy number of them over an interim period. It doesn't need to be every week. It may be once a month, but whatever that is, that you're able to connect in healthier, more productive ways. And they also know how to reflect and communicate back to you. So we can get to this place of trust, of belonging, of engagement that just breeds not just productivity, Rebecca, but it breeds innovation. This is what lifts companies and grows companies and makes companies expansive.
We see the dynamic in society right now,
Yeah.
both in the workplace, in our government, and it seems to be moving away from empathy. And there are, not to mention the mass layoffs that are happening, some of them because of AI. There's a lot happening with how AI is being infused into the workplace. How do you see your tool being a part of that evolution that AI is already quickly impacting at not just at the business level, but also at the societal level? Where does that fit in, and how do you see Parsley being a part of that evolution in a positive way to create a positive force for good?
There are a few ways it can really help. First of all, for anyone in an organization or in the working world, I would encourage you to start using AI, get used to it, learn about it, figure out what it is that you do, what you're really good at, what your passion is, and how does AI help you or help your profession or with what you do can help the organization that you work for, and how you can help implement that, because AI will replace a number of jobs, as a lot of new technologies have done over the past, and it will create new ones. So it's about looking forward for each individual and saying, well, what's the new position for me? What is so now let's go into upskilling. So we have a whole learning dynamic that will become part of our app, and the AI gets to know you personally over time and your passions. You can have these conversations with our AI, Parsley, your AI coach, and the coach's name, it will be whichever coach you choose, but say Dakota or Jax or whoever it is. And you might say, I love to do this, but I haven't done it as a career move. This is what I have done. How can I link those together? How could I become more proficient with AI where I can be the person that a company needs to call on to do this? Where do I fit into this equation? And you can use your AI to help upskill you. I think for the most part, some of those companies that have done some layoffs are going to rehire human beings because they're not quite ready for pure AI. They're going to feel the pain of that. We're not quite there, but in some cases, we may eventually get there. So it's really about how do you position yourself. Parsley can help with each individual to regulate their emotions, to start to work on their change muscle, the transition muscle, because it's hard and we resist it. We get stuck in fear. And so being able to help shift out of that fear into curiosity and creativity and what can I do is a big one. It's just really starting with someone where they are. It can help with upskilling and reskilling. It can help with those wellness pieces. So that's a great way. You have your coach in hand all the time, anytime, anywhere. How many of us have our coach on speed dial? It's one of those things where I'm really having a down moment. I'm having some difficulty. I'm trying to figure this out. I need some reflection on this. You have somebody right there with you in the moment that's also really smart and intelligent and gets this, gets you, it's empathetic, but also gets that we need to move this forward. That's what coaching is, right? We move towards the goal. So now that we're kind of shifting out of fear, we're able to get our logical brain back connected to the emotional brain that's been caught in, hyperdrive or overdrive. How can we look at this to move?
Yeah, so I'm just curious, what are your reflections on what I said at the very beginning of the conversation about Gen Z and the younger generation having social anxiety and leaning on technology rather than having those face-to-face dialogues? How do you see this supporting them in a way that will not just further exacerbate this anxiety that we're seeing in the younger generation?
Well, I think this goes back to the creators of the AI. And I think everyone should look very carefully at the companies and the leaders of those companies for any AI or tech that they are using, because the way that tech is being designed and developed is going to come from the intent of the leaders and whether they've maintained that, whether what they're saying in terms of their intention and what they're doing with that is reflected in the product that you're using. And I say that because we are teaching our AI to help people connect back to each other in healthier, more productive ways. I know I've said that many times. I'm repeating it a lot, but it's because it's important. We are not a tech that's going to say, just use me instead of people. We've been spending a lot of time talking about this stuff, but who have you connected with lately? And how did that conversation go? Please don't connect back to me until you've made that phone call, until you've met that person at the coffee shop. We used to meet at the water cooler. Now so many people work remotely. I understand how nice it is to be able to work from home. I do it, you do it. We've been there, we've done it. But you may remember the days where we had to go into an office. And you may remember all the human connection we had in those offices. It's not that we didn't have technology, it's just that humans were around us a lot more. And so I would ask Gen Z to look at all the benefits of being in an office, maybe asking for a hybrid if they really want, that flexibility. Everybody loves flexibility, right? But really embracing the human connection. And so going back to Parsley, we've designed this because we believe that this is just to help people become more human and to help humanity. We're still studying Gen Z. We're starting to see the alpha generation as well. They need more playtime. They need more connection. They need more self-reflection. They need to be a little bit less fragile. And I don't say that in a bad way. A lot of people make fun of this fragility. The fragility is just that they don't know how friggin' strong they are yet because they aren't being tested. But for anyone that is in the Gen Z and just so worried about every little nuance to your wellness, I want you to know how strong you are and that you will be tested in life and that you can handle more. You have greater capacity. You can expand into this. That not every interaction is going to be the way you wanted it to go. And your agency isn't to fall back into your fragility or just move on in your company. It's to figure it out and learn how to have better conversations for you to do some of the listening, not just worry about why somebody isn't listening to you. It's for you to do some of that deep listening as well and imagine how maybe somebody else may not feel included in that conversation and then ask somebody to listen to you. It's not different than the way I've taught my managers in the past. I've always taught them to listen first.
I love that you're infusing that as a core element into your platform because I think all of us just as a society, we're not listening to each other anymore, which is why we're so polarized in politics. And yeah, I mean, we just don't listen to each other. So hopefully AI can teach us a bit of that as well along the way.
I have this whole series on my LinkedIn that I'm just starting, but I'd love you to, and any of your listeners, to get into the conversation. It's called Brave Conversations, and it's really about bringing civility back to our conversations. It's really about going from, fists up and conflict and how we respond and react if we think somebody isn't speaking the same language or have the same beliefs or the same perspectives as we do, and how we can turn those into better conversations.
I will definitely check that out. Yeah. I hope all of you do as well. Do you have any final thoughts for today's conversation? I would say is if you're approached by anyone who's even somewhat skeptical about this concept of infusing empathy into AI, what would be the one thing you tell that person who's not quite on board yet, not sure how this would impact their organization in a positive way?
Yeah, I would say explore, be curious. You need to make your own decision, but I would say first and foremost, and this is true of everything, but especially in this day and age with AI coming in and being it's such a game changer, right? Start with curiosity because we tend to start with fear. Fear, or I should say nervousness, feels the same in our body as excitement. We might feel the little butterflies in our stomach or our heart starts to beat a little more. fear, excitement. If you shift that to, well, what could be good about this? What could be interesting or exciting about this? That puts you on the path to being curious. Okay, even if you open that door just a little bit, and you let a little sliver of light through curiosity, that will take you to creativity. And so I say, watch my TEDx, consider how humans at times have trouble with empathy. Some don't even value it and don't understand it. Or some are confused about what empathy really is and think it's sympathy. Or some are over-indexing on the empathy to the point of compassion fatigue. Humans are complex. We're definitely stretched and overwhelmed, and we do get easily distracted. How could AI just help us in the moment so we have more time so somebody else can be a frontline when we can't be there?
I love that. I love that you're creating a support tool for people who are already feeling stretched thin. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. Anyone who's passionate about empathy is welcome here, and clearly you have a passion for it. And I love that you're combining your work in technology with therapy as well. I'm sure you're learning from both sides of what you do at the same time, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, and Rebecca, for so long before I started this company, I really thought empathy was just foundational. It wasn't even something I really talked about because I had already kind of leapfrogged that. I worked that into how I show up in the world, how I interact professionally and personally. And I really didn't think of it as a deficit in other people or a need that certainly I saw that, but I wasn't registering because I just thought, okay, I need to just keep showing up and doing this work, but without focusing back on empathy. And I think now, since I've been doing this work and I've connected with so many incredible empathy advocates like you, I realize how important this conversation is. And I hear empathy as part of a discussion across so many areas. And at the end of the day, we need to be able to shift outside of our perspectives, which, are not infinite. They're based on our experiences only. And if we can shift, and we can so easily, we do it when we watch movies, right? Think about cinema. We're watching a movie and we get into somebody else's role and we start, rooting for somebody or worrying about them or crying because of what they're going through. And it's not anything we've ever been through. So we can do this as human beings. We can imagine what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes without having ever had their experience. And we just need to do that without imposing our own experiences on theirs, without sucking the energy back to us. We need to be able to do that just lovingly and openly and with this intent of giving.
And that's the challenge. That is the challenge for all of us. That's the hard part, not bringing it back to us and our situation. So I'd say that's a great way to wrap up this conversation. It gives me something to work on. That last quote there is my project for the next week, is to really exercise that curiosity and understanding of the other side without always bringing it back to yourself and your own personal situation. I love that. Thank you so much for being here, Sheryl, and thank you for the great work that you're doing with Parsley.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rebecca, and for your great work.
Thank you. It's a pleasure. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts. And if you would like to learn more about the Empathy Collective, check out our website, theempathycollective.com. Life is too short. Let's take care of each other at work so that together we can make this world a better place.